across politics know exactly what you are thinking. You're thinking, what do I do if Trump wins? And you're also thinking, what do I do if Trump loses? Well, we have the answers for you because Keith Darrell is here sitting in for Pastor Toby. He's going to answer all of your questions and solve all the problems in the world on this show.
That's what I do.
Are you concerned with your child's current education? Right, this is the heart of the show. This is in the show. Consider homeschooling with classical conversations by applying.
Don't consider it. Just go do it.
Model of education. The classical conversations curriculum encourages students to learn how to learn, and how to think. That's actually pretty important. Learn how to learn. And I didn't learn that until I was about 25.
Some would say, never mind.
That's a story for another day. And how to think for themselves so they can adapt every challenge in life that life throws them. Join the over 50,000 families in 50 countries who have chosen to educate. I think that number's even bigger now.
It is.
Yeah. Who chose to educate their children with classical conversations by visiting classicalconversations.com. /FLF. You put that / in it, it helps them know that you listen to our show. So classicalconversations.com /FLF.
Can I just say something about them real quick? Classical Conversations, I'm just so grateful for those guys. Just as the kind of people they are. When we started doing this show, we probably had, maybe 300 people listening at the time. Just started. Maybe 300.
No, it was 6 months in, and we probably had about
305.
800 downloads per episode.
Okay.
Which is
right. And so
nothing to brag about.
Nothing to brag about at all. And lo and behold, they became sponsors right from jump, and they've been down since the beginning. So we really love Classical Conversations. Go support those people. Yep. That's what I want to say.
Very much. Yep. Rubber boards.
Everybody I know whose children are doing it, they're all pretty exceptional children as far as, well-read, bright.
We can't promise that. Everybody's kids are different.
We don't want to overpromise and underdeliver here.
Anecdotally, I've seen good fruit from it.
But we are in the show going to overpromise and underdeliver because we're going to answer all your problems regarding Trump and Biden for the November election.
We got answers.
We got it. So we had Davis Yuntz on the show this past week. If you guys didn't get a chance to check that out, Davis
yesterday. Was it yesterday?
Talked about, it's this past week. Okay. That's probably the better way to phrase it. And he kind of broke down the Trump trial that just happened and his conviction and kind of the silliness of what the
very
judge
balanced.
Did. Yeah, it was really, really helpful. So go back and check out that show because I think there's actually just some better understanding what just happened. I think will actually help in how we process the presidential election coming up. So I think there's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who are, if Trump wins, we're screwed. If Biden wins, we're screwed. Are both saying that. Liberals. But I think that the angst and the anxiety and the political boilerplate is pretty high right now. And so we already saw when Trump won in 2016, Black Lives Matter burnt the church down just down the street from the White House when Trump won. And then we saw when Biden won, you had January 6th, okay? Not an insurrection, but you had some people not thinking clearly.
Those weren't directly associated to the winning or losses of one or the other, were they? January 6th is closer associated.
The church burning was. Oh, yeah. That happened a day.
So Trump won, and they're like, go burn down the church.
Burn the church, yeah.
Yep. I don't know.
No, that happened. Go back and I literally just saw the tape.
And that was their thing. Is like, because Trump won, we're gonna go burn down the church.
Well, they started rioting. They flipped over cars and started rioting.
I think I remember. Okay, I do remember some riots breaking out.
And the church down the street from the White House got burned. It's part of the riot.
Okay, Is that where Trump took his picture?
It was the Bible where he took his picture in front of Trump. Yeah.
Okay, I think I remember that now.
So you already have kind of this two past elections where there was high angst and some sort of protest or riot. Now we're coming into this November election where you're kind of visiting this Trump-Biden scenario, but with way more angst and way more. I mean, it's no surprise to anybody that Biden in his lawfare is going after Trump. Like that's not, so you already have things looking rigged or things looking polarized. And so I think this election is going to be pretty full of anxiety.
On both sides.
On both sides. If Biden wins, there's a bunch of rednecks who are like, hey, we're going to deal with this immigration problem, whether we're going to fix it ourselves.
Can we talk about that for a second? I mean, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
And that's, my comments aren't far off. Like I'm
going to say something about that. Go ahead. I'm going to say something about that.
That's happening right now.
Because rednecks, y'all let me down. We're rednecks. Y'all let me down. I'll let you finish. I'm gonna tell you how they let me down.
Armor sales and ammo sales are up.
That doesn't mean nothing.
And they're only going to increase.
Doesn't mean nothing.
Okay.
That don't mean nothing. I know why they're up.
And then
by the way.
if Trump loses, you have the lawfare stuff. Well, you guys tried to get him. You got him convicted and all this stuff, and so the right are pretty anxious now. If Trump wins and Biden loses, you're going to have the BLM leftists. I mean, they already rioted last election with Trump in 2016. So I think that's just kind of framing things out a little bit.
So let me get this straight. So you think that if Biden loses, that you're going to get another kind of BLM rise of the liberal angst?
Yeah, and I think
it'll even be worse.
It's
Really?
It's going to be 7 demons. It's not going to be 1 demon.
Yeah.
Huh.
You remember Portland, and this is not related to Trump's victory. It is related to the BLM riots after George Floyd.
Yeah.
But in Portland, they were in Portland. BLM was in Portland for like 105 days or something, rioting.
This got Chaz and all that stuff like that.
I remember talking to Sierra Wiley recently, and it's like downtown Portland is done.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I will say I was there 2 weeks ago. Small little revival. Like there was life again. Like I'd go through there for the past 4 years, and it really was like buildings were boarded up. I went through there for the first time 2 weeks ago, and I was kind of like, holy cow, like there's actually some life back down in Portland. So we'll see what kind of happens.
I think Gucci's still open down there. Seriously.
I'm surprised they didn't loot Gucci.
I'm not so sure that I think that the left is going to lose their mind again the same way.
Yeah.
I think that we would expect that from them, but I really don't think that that's how they're going to operate. The right, especially the rent, no. And here's why I feel like that. Because what I expected from my rednecks during COVID, I did not get.
Yeah.
Like if there was one group of people, there was 2 groups that really, really, really let me down. The rednecks and the punk rockers.
Yeah.
Like I expected the punk, like you don't tell them how to wear the color of their hair. They will wear hair and do all kinds of wear black clothes and be all kinds of whichever way they want to. And all of a sudden they were like, put on a mask. And you're like,
yeah. And they're still wearing the mask.
And they're still wearing it. Yes.
Yeah. 4
you're
years
like,
later.
You can't go outside. They said I can't go outside, y'all. You're the punk rocker who's like started a whole movement in your garage and you're bending over for the government. Like, nah, I'm not. I don't trust it anymore. Yeah. And then the redneck guys, they're like, okay, well, I don't like it, but.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying I wanted them to go hot, but there wasn't enough of resistance at the front.
I kind of did want them to go hot, though.
I didn't. Oh, no. See, that's the thing. Like,
I'm not saying that, but I kind of am.
That's what people like. If they didn't like January 6th, I think and this is especially for my liberal friends who keep pushing and prodding and poking at the redneck folk and at the country folk, and just so y'all know, the redneck population. Just so they can get an understanding of how big this is the full minority of the black community. The whole black community, 13%. That's the redneck population.
Yeah, they're 13% too.
Except they're all unified.
Yeah,
us we're kind of fractioned off and pieces. No, they're all. That's all them unified. So if they ever decide to go high, it's going to be a problem, a real problem. So Don't poke that bear. Don't prod that bear. If January 6th was bad and they didn't have no guns.
They didn't have no rednecks there.
And I mean, just leave that one alone. Don't push the people who, I think also with the ammo thing, I think what's happening with the ammo is I think you have people on both sides, a lot of leftists, a lot of people in the gooey middle who bought guns that never bought guns in the last 5 years because of the riots and things were unsettling. And they're like, well, I need to have some firearms. Let me figure out how to shoot.
And now cops aren't coming to their rescue.
You shut down. So, but I don't think we're going to get that. I think both sides are going to try and replant themselves to make a bigger play later. I really feel like that. I think that they know because everybody's fighting for power. I think there has to be one other spark. I don't think it's just the election. There has to be something else where it's like, okay, now all hopelessness is here, and now we have to go. I don't think that's where we're at yet.
Okay, all right. So to frame this out a little further, I think that part of what we need to be how we need to be thinking about this a little bit is we have to be understanding our history. We have to know how nations transition power or not transition power, and we also have to understand kind of what the Bible says about all this. I don't want to be that Christian who says, well, the presidential election doesn't matter. I'm not voting. I'm not engaged. I'm just going to, take care of my kids and my family here. And I also don't want to be that guy on the other ditch saying, having this high anxiety, like, oh my goodness, if I don't get my president elected, our nation's screwed.
Yeah.
Kind of thinking through, Psalm 20, some trust in chariots, some trust in horses, but we trust in the Lord our God. I want to be the kind of faithful Christian in this moment who knows how to rightly look at our president, not as a savior, and also be the kind of Christian who understands that, I don't trust in chariots. I trust in the Lord. I need to be involved. I need to be a thinking Christian in this moment, and I shouldn't just check out. And because the president's so far over there, that it is what it is. So I think part of understanding history here is I think our nation is. Well, let me put it this way: when revolution happens, it like the French Revolutionary War. It's a revolution when things get worse after the war, right? Things got worse. The American Revolutionary War was not a revolutionary war, and it wasn't a revolutionary war because things got better, less chaos, more organized. French Revolutionary War sowed more chaos, and so we need to be kind of thinking. And I don't think we aren't like at this Revolutionary War period between Trump and Biden. I don't want to give them too much credit for that stuff. But we are in a situation where I think the political anxiety in our nation is super high in such a way where I think our nation's trusting in this election too much. I think our nation has too much anxiety tied up in November. And at the same time, I don't want to be that Christian who gets in the other ditch and says, well, it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah. Well, I think something like spending some time in something like Jeremiah, because his country's coming under judgment.
What is Jeremiah?
Jeremiah is a prophet in the Old Testament.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We don't read that anymore.
I know, yeah. So we just jettisoned it. But what's really fascinating is if you study it, like he's dealing with very real historical judgments. King Nebuchadnezzar is going to come in, wipe you guys out. And like, I think I genuinely look at our land, and there is almost like in chapter 25 of Jeremiah, he makes them drink basically the wine of God's wrath. And so they get drunk and they're in a stupor. Like preaching on campus, interacting with people in the culture, we're in a drunken stupor, whether it's right wing, whether it's left wing. Yeah. And so where I sit, I kind of think our country's under the judgment of God. And that's not to negate some ruler. But Toby and Doug has mentioned this numerous times. We can't vote our way out of this mess.
That's right.
And I think, and I think studying something like Jeremiah and seeing the very real historical judgment is about to fall on Jerusalem, and they're relying on the temple. They're like, well, you've turned the temple into a den of thieves. Like, you're used to hanging out in the caves and stuff like that. Now you're hiding in the temple. And so I think our culture, be it right wing, be it left wing, is genuinely corrupt in both ways. That there is a strand as Christians. We don't have to have any fear in the sense that, we trust in the Lord. And the remedy really is the simplicity of worship, like calling people to repentance, calling people to faith in Jesus Christ, and recognizing that, like, if we go into exile, so to speak, that we're not that we're the Israelites. I think that component of recognizing historical judgments of God and a culture that's in a drunken stupor, that's how I just look at our land. Like, you can't reason with people out of this mess. It's just like,
the reason is gone.
Yeah, it's gone. It's pure emotion.
So maybe
if somebody was wondering, yes, we were trying to baptize a baby in the background, and it didn't go as we thought. But just so y'all was knowing, that's what was going on.
So maybe this illustration be helpful too, where I think you're driving and where I want to drive here. Let's say I'm Trump's campaign manager in the state of Ohio, a swing state, very crucial state in the election, or Michigan, Wisconsin, whatever. Pick your state. Now, there's two ways to be, Trump's campaign manager. There's one where it's like, I'm highly anxious. I got to do everything I can to win this state for Trump, or we lose the election. It's all on me. We can't have Biden. Immigration's awful. Inflation's high. All that stuff.
Yeah.
Or I could be a Christian about it and be thinking biblically about it. Okay, my duty is to win Ohio. I got to do my best. And no Psalm 20. Some trust in chariots, some trust in horses, but we trust in the Lord of God. And I can do my best to orchestrate a victory in Ohio, but I don't have this anxiousness that's stirring my heart. I have this trust in God that I'm relying on and resting in. So the same thing happens with judgment. If God, I've talked about this before, where I really think November is kind of like King David's scenario when he ordered Joab to do the census, and then God punished David and came back to David, Judge David, came back to David and said, hey, you got 3 punishments. Pick your punishment. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now in this November election, where it's like, well, do you want the judgment of Biden or the judgment of Trump? I'd prefer the judgment of Trump is what I'd pick. You know, if I got my 3 years, 3 days, 3 months kind of thing, I'm going to pick the 3 days, right? I'll pick Trump. But I'm in Ohio. But it's how are you trusting in the Lord about this? Sure, you know, vote, cast your vote, whatever. But are you trusting in the Lord in this moment in time? And if Jeremiah is dealing with judgment in his land, you could handle that judgment in a highly anxious way, in a way where you aren't trusting in the Lord, or you can handle the judgment in such a way where you're receiving it from God, you're receiving it from the hand of God, and you're trusting in Him, and where the chips may fall. That's how we need to be, I think, in a lot of ways, looking at this election.
I don't really like how this is framed.
Okay.
Because I think that we are, in a lot of ways, tossing away a blessing that has come from our forefathers just by the way we're having the conversation. Our forefathers had built a nation in such a way that the presidency shouldn't be as much of a leading conversation as it is right now.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think the reason that it's such a leading conversation is because we haven't been doing the hard work at the very local level. So then everything that the presidency does, there's no fences in between him and us.
Yeah.
There's nothing. So everybody then says, in order for me to protect what's going on in my home, I don't go to my sheriff. I don't go to like Davis Young said, prosecuting attorney.
Do you know your DA?
I don't go to my governor. I don't go to my city council. What I have to do is make the play for the largest, most important part of our nation, because there's all the erosion has happened and no one's working really to build that up. So we have to make a jump for the presidency. And what the president does now has massive importance in what happens every day in my home.
Right.
And what we've done is we've neglected the wonderful setup that our forefathers have given us in the way that our country works.
Right.
And it's not that it can't work that way. We just aren't doing it.
Right.
We aren't applying it. When we finished Davis Young's show yesterday, our producer Neil said, yeah, I agree. Let's get a good DA and let's get people to get him in the office. The problem is I can't get 50 people to support that DA.
Right.
But we can get 500,000 people to try and vote for Trump.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so what happens at a local level, we just have no mind for it. We're not even thinking on that level. And so whatever Trump does, if you ask me, hey, what are you going to do if Trump wins? And I'm going to tell you the same thing I'm going to do if Trump loses.
Right.
Like, because what I need to be doing and my level of engagement isn't really based on the presidency. Mm-hmm. And everything that everybody's talking about is the presidency. Right. And man, Keith, I see you ready to double dutch. But so, and we have this lovely tradition, and everybody talks about tradition and conservatism and all this stuff, and no one say, hey, listen, pump your brakes for a second. You got a 25, 30, maybe 40-year span of work in front of you. That's what you have. There is no Ozempic for this.
Yeah.
Do you understand me? You don't get out of this fatness by putting a shot in you. Okay? You're fat, you're overweight, you have no way to get, and you think that you're going to push this little button and you're going to lose all the weight overnight. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, that's not the situation we're in.
And we saw that in 16 to 20. We've already, Trump has already been elected, and what you maybe thought was going to happen didn't happen. If anything, I would say the rebound of the summer of 2020, summer of Florida, whatever you want to call it,
and COVID,
all that sort of stuff. Like we came out almost the other side, worse.
Yeah. And I think Ben Merkel at our conference, 2 or 3 years ago, said, listen, here's what you need to do. And then I'm going to, after I say this, I want to play the clip because I think it's going to lead right into the other marching orders. But here's what you need to do. You need to go find yourself a church community that you can be a part of for 40 years and commit yourself there.
That's right.
We can't even get people to take their kids out of government schools.
Right. Yep.
And then we think that they're trying to Ozempic, but I'll vote for Trump.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
No, you can't. It's not going to work like that.
That's right.
And so this past weekend, I was at a conference that Jason Whitlock threw called Fearless 2.0. And it's a
Roll Call 2.0.
Fearless is the show. Roll Call is the conference. Thank you. Roll Call 2.0. And he had some great speakers there. One of them was Vody Bakum. And Vody said this at the conference. And I think this is, for me, the key on how I plan to approach all of this.
Do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. That's biblical masculinity. That's biblical headship in the home. A spiritual leader who is washing his wife with the water of the word and bringing up his children in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And instead, we got a bunch of women out there with husbands that they pray, well, just go to church with them. You can't say amen, y'all to say ouch.
Ouch.
We got young women growing up in church, bringing home knuckleheads who don't know Jesus from the man in the moon. And fathers who are all right with it. If he's good on the ball field and got money in his billfold. Because we have also devalued manhood, devalued masculinity, devalued real biblical male headship. And our grandchildren pay the price for it. Because they're not being raised by godly spiritual men, but by boys who can't put away boyish games.
That line, we're making our grandchildren pay the price for it.
That's right.
Made me say, what is it that I'm putting on the credit card that my grandchildren are going to have to pay the price for?
Right.
And I'm thinking about this not just in, the culture, but I'm saying, let me break out these areas of authority: self-government, family, the church, the state. And what is it that I'm not doing in these areas of authority that I have that is pushing the can down the road so that my grandchildren are going to have to pay the price for what I'm not doing? Mm-hmm. And when I start thinking about that, it gives me immediately marching orders on what I'm supposed to be doing in this very moment if Trump does win the presidency.
Right. Or if Biden
wins the presidency. Right. My marching orders might have a little bit of a different appeal because I'm in a different situation. And so I don't think we can answer that question without asking, where are you at? Mm-hmm. Where has God placed you? Where's the authority God has given you to operate in? And then based on what happens, what should you be doing so that you aren't kicking the can down the road for your grandchildren to pay for this?
So the question is, what could you build and accomplish in the next 40 years that set your kids up in a better way?
Who's talking like that? Who's talking? We got 40 years, guys. Yep. We got 25 years. No one is talking about, listen, the sacrifice. Everybody's talking about being bold and the sacrifice, but what they're talking about is you have to start engaging the trans movement, right? Mm-hmm. Like fight for the kids. Yeah. And it's like, but the fight for the kids is to get them out the government school. Yeah. The fight for the kids is you're saying, honey, I don't know how we're going to do it, but the income that you have, that you're going to work every day, we're going to take that and we're going to put it into our own children. Right. We're going to find a church community and move our family there at our own cost and live however we have to live so that the next 25 and 30 years for our grandchildren, we've paid off that credit card so that they don't have to start in our debt. Right.
And so what we've done is we looked at the presidency. Back to your point, we've looked at the presidency as kind of like our savior. Easily. And then we structure our families in such a way where we're sacrificing our family for that savior.
Easy.
Right? So we aren't.
Ozempic.
I mean, maybe think of it this way. I asked this question just a second ago. What can you be doing in the next 40 years that are going to set up your kids to be better off than you when you started off your family?
I think this is kind of basic, but like even just beginning to ask that question, because like you said, nobody's really thinking in those terms. Like when I studied economics in undergrad, Keynes said in the long term we're all dead, and so it's just like so no one had a long term perspective. You know what I mean? So even like with the COVID or say you're pumping money into the economy, they're not really thinking through the inflation. We just got to get it's like if you're really tired and just keep pumping caffeine, you need to sleep for a bit. And so I think just begin to ask that question, and thinking through. All right, God will love my children to 1,000 generations. How do we begin to orient ourselves towards that? And then from there, you are going to be radically different than America. You are going to be radically different than the things. And that's actually going to lay the foundation because our foundation is not square. So everything we're building on is off. And so if we can keep that, if we can get that thing square as parents are asking that question, I think that's kind of the way forward.
So hold on. Yeah. Let me read this ad. But let's answer that question. I got some ideas on it that actually will affect our nation, will actually impact our nation. Voting for the president is not going to impact our nation in such a way as much as raising my kids faithfully and putting them in a better position than I was. Yeah. So hold on that. Public houses or pubs are not just places to drink beer, wine, cider, or even something a little stronger, key and tea. It's also a unique social center. Very often, I killed it. I got Keith going. Very often, the focus of community life in villages, towns, and cities. You better become a pub member. Let me just put it that way. That's where this ad's going. Become a pub member.
You can get joy like Keith.
You're going to get me laughing like last time, man.
Oh, no, not
We're
live on
here
the
at
show.
Cospolitic. Hope to emulate that for you and yours. That's why you should grab yourself a pub membership at fightlaughfeast.com. We need you on this ride with us. We can't do what we're doing without more pub members. We can't. Please join the pub. So pull up a chair, grab a pint, and join us on this ride at fightlaughfeast.com. That's fightlaughfeast.com. And of course, you get discounts at our Prodigal America Conference pub members, which is in Fort Worth, and Early Bird Phase 2 ends July 1st. So become a club member, join up, and then join the conference, and we'll see you there at Fort Worth in October. We can't wait for that prodigalamerica.com. So
go ahead.
The question is then, okay, because we want to have that balance between like, okay, the presidency is not important.
It's not that it's not important. That's what I want to correct. Like a lot of times when you have this conversation, there's one group that says, listen, you just took away, you talk about building for your kids, but now that you don't have this authority up here, they gonna take everything that you've been trying to build for your kids.
Right.
And this is like that their rules to engagement aren't God's rules to engagement. Mm-hmm. And we forget so much. And I was just thinking about this. When we're having the argument, the trans argument, we're having the homosexual argument, we're having the economic argument, we forget one thing all the time. First of all, we have God on our side. That's right. One. Yep. The second thing we forget is that God made the world a particular type of way.
Right.
So reality, it actually has an effect on how they live.
Right.
We have reality on our side, people.
Right.
Like, just don't forget that. Like the world is made to function a particular way.
There's a way to cut with the grain.
There's a way to cut with the grain. And that's why when you can have a group of people who don't have voting rights in America, it can still build a massively important and
because they're cutting with the grain by building their families.
Because they're cutting with the grain. That's why in order to really destroy the black family, it wasn't anything else you did. You had to get rid of, in order to destroy black culture, you had to destroy the black family.
Right.
And that's what the government was trying to, and we let them, but they had to embrace it. That's how we destroyed it. So it's not that we're not caring about the presidency. It's because we care so much about it that we engage this way.
Right.
Because if we need to have a constitution that exists, if we care about our country, we need civility behind all of it.
Right.
We need a moral center behind all of it. And the moral center comes from what Vody was just talking about. Husbands loving their wives.
Right.
Raising their children in the fear and admonition of the Lord, and baptizing like we were trying to do with that little baby earlier. You know what I'm saying? So that's where all this stuff comes from. So it's because we care so much about it that we do this.
Right.
It has a domino effect the right way. Okay, I just want to make sure that was very clear.
So quick tangent. Did you ever see the Peru-Igo myth? It was a documentary on Peru-Igo, were one of the first projects built in St. Louis. Okay. And what was so tragic about it is they were interviewing people who were born there, and it was predominantly black families, and it was the dad leaving because you had to have under a certain amount of money.
That's right.
And if dad was present, you couldn't have that. And this girl was crying, talking about her dad leaving because he thought you're going to have a better life. And so even as we think through, like there's that pragmatic element. You're looking at the situation like, well, if I leave, my family's going to have a better life. But biblically and just kind of natural order of things, you wish that man knew, like, no, we're going to be poor, but you're going to have a better life. Come on now. And we need to think that through, that like short term, we need this. We're going to have a better life. So we need, but no, what is the foundation going to be laid where the dad's going to be present, where the gospel's going to be there? Yeah. I think that's the central element that we can't buy into that pragmatic swing of things. Like, look, we're losing, we're poor. I'm going to leave because you and your mother are going to have a better life. Now they're 3 generations down of having a worse life because they were sold a lie at the beginning. It's going to be better if you do this. Right. And as Christians, we need to be persuaded. What do the scriptures teach on how we live, how we move and have our being? And we're not going to compromise at those points for the short term idea that it's going to get better. And the next thing you know, 3 generations down, it's worse. So I do think that's a central element. Like you just watch this documentary, you're just like, man,
interesting.
Because
what they were able to do was disrupt the center, the family. And once that's blown up, so many other things have blown up.
Keith said stuff and I want to say more stuff. You better hurry up, dude, because I got more stuff I want to say.
Go.
Yeah, here's something else too. Like, are things bad? Yes. Yes. Yeah. I'm not even going to argue with yes, they're bad. Right. But here's something else. They are not so bad as you think, right? if you're a Christian, they are never as bad as you think. Because when you're looking at the field of dry bones, the question always is, can these dry bones live?
That's right.
And your answer is, Lord, thou knowest, right? You serve the God of death and resurrection. So you don't fear when something dies. You know that God has an escape, a way to tell the story or to take victory through that death. And so we live and function with that reality. And so we do the things that are common because we know God's going to bless it.
That's right.
And so it's like, well, that's not the big thing. That's not the sexy thing. Go know your city councilman. Make sure they know you. Go know your sheriff. Go know your DA. Figure those basic things out on the closest level and start taking responsibility there. I am a recipient of 40 years of Pastor Wilson's work here in this town and other people with him. And let me tell you something. There wasn't a better place for me to live during COVID. There hasn't been a better place for me to live since in the last 10 years, right? And there's so many blessings because they started education systems and they started training systems. And now there is a mindset and a culture that is reverberating out of here that I'm a recipient of, that my kids get to take part of. And if we don't start finding those hubs, plug into them and engage on a very local level, we won't have the protections that we need, because you can't ever forget there was always light in Goshen. Right? The lights went out. God left light in Goshen.
That's right.
You were going to say something, Gabe?
Oh, there's a smattering of thoughts here, but a lot of people come here and visit Moscow and look at the downtown businesses we've started, look at the churches we planted. I mean, we're probably going to plant another 2 churches this year. So we're going to be up to, 5 or 6 churches in a town of 20,000 people and surrounding neighborhoods or surrounding cities. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Doug started Logos in 1892.
Back. He knew Frederick Douglass.
Walked to school uphill both ways. And 1982, something like that. And then, Doug started New St. Andrews in 1994. And then there's our Greyfires, our pastoral training program, Greyfires Hall, that's been going. And then businesses have been built around this. And so you come to Moscow and you're like, wow, you guys are so far along. And, and of course we think like you guys just don't see the duct tape that's holding everything up, right?
It's all grace, man.
It's all, and it's duct tape. I feel like, we talk about this all the time. I feel every year I think cross politics wheels are going to fall off.
Yeah. The wheels are off.
The wheels are off.
We just got momentum,
we're
bro.
Dragging one.
We just got momentum
down the hill. But what I encourage people to do when they come and visit Moscow is not to get discouraged about what it would take to get here.
Yeah.
Because it can be overwhelming. But the point is like, start somewhere. Like, don't think what you're going to do is you're going to turn your town in 5 years into what we have here. But where you start, family, of course, family, church, school, education, that's where, and then start a pub. It's like the Pilgrims came here and they built a church, they built a pub, and they built a school. Like, that was kind of the founding of America in a lot of ways, and the economy. But know that you can spend the next 40 years of your life, and then this could happen.
Yeah, because most people don't know Doug. Well, I heard of him about 1998, something like that. 1997 was the first time I heard of him. But over the last 10 years, his name has obviously grown. Yeah. But it was 30 years of just plodding along, and then you start to get the uptick of that getting out,
of controversies and
but I think that element of just being like, I'm going to move to Missoula, Montana. I'm going to be faithful the next 40 years, and so I think that's one of the key things that people often miss. It's not like this just happened. You know what I mean?
Well, think of it this way too.
Nothing just happened. That left didn't just happen.
No,
right?
All these billionaires and millionaires, they're constantly trying to start national programs.
Let's
fund Charlie Kirk, TPUSA, national, get the vote out kind of thing, right? Why not build your own city? Why not focus with your resources, right, on what's going on in your own town, and see what God does in the next 40 years? That I think it's.
Can I just say that's how Obama really got elected? People don't know this. They got on the ground at the local level, and they beat the pavement talking to people, and it was like they became true evangelists of Obama on every local level, local levels. And so it was amazing what they did.
So, kind of goes back to the question we were asking earlier. What can you do in the next, that will affect your next generation? What, practically speaking, can you do? And I was just kind of thinking through this off while we're talking through the show. But I would love in the next 40 years to see how I could build, 3 houses for my 3 kids. It's like, what practically, how can I set my kids up in such a way where they're better off and they don't, for example, I'm just using the house example, but they don't have a mortgage and they can now use their resources for something bigger than trying to buy a house. Lord willing, some of the businesses I run and I'm starting, and I can hand that off to one of my kids so they don't have to go through the painful time of trying to build a business. But they're in a situation now where they got a business and they got a house. And how much more they can do than I will ever be able to do.
Mm-hmm. You're hitting on some stuff that, remember we had Jerry Boyer on?
Yeah.
And he was talking about how we have not been taking advantages of the very low-hanging fruit that's right in front of us. So our conservatives and our Republican folks will take things that are stress points for us, like the stuff inside the classrooms or stuff inside the library, the stuff inside of Target, the transgender stuff, and they'll motivate us to get us to vote nationally. But Jerry Boyer is like, you have direct access to these companies by investing $2,000
$1,000 in stock or $200 in stock,
$2,000 worth of stock is enough for you to be able to actually get something on the books to come and speak to these large woke corporations. And we have many of Christian investors that we've just said, I'll go the other way. It's like, wait, there's ground over there to be taken? Low-hanging fruit to invest in? And he's got a whole company that's helping you do it. And that's how Bonson has been able to speak to some of these larger JP and Morgan, right? And be able to speak to them and say, let's not do that. And because we have, once again, gravity is on our side, as much as people say there isn't such thing as gravity, we just say, okay, sure, jump off the top of the building. We're going to win the argument there. We can go in and say, listen, if the job of this company is to make money, this is stupid. And we can actually win those arguments, right? We have, and this is what I want to say. It's not too far gone. And we keep on thinking in ourselves, it's so far gone, we can't get it back. And it's like, no, you don't have to run for all where the leftists communicate to us. These are where the power levers are. That's not where they are, right? There is somewhere else. That Jesus was born in a stable. Right? Right? That's where the power levers were.
Yeah, they had 12 dudes, and here we are 2,000 years later. Still up kind of ending the world.
Exactly.
One quick thing, and again, obviously not being prophetic, but one of the beauties of Jeremiah's story is he buys land in Israel. So they're about to go into exile. So you're like, hey, short Israel. You know what I mean? Short all the property. So he buys because he knows there's death and resurrection. So we're going to be restored back to the land. So yes, we're going to go into exile. And so
he got beachfront property on the cheap.
So he got, And so I think to your point, like you mentioned earlier, the death and resurrection narrative, like as a people, and every individual is going to be a little bit different, but like having this mindset, like, things are going to be tough, things are going to be difficult, but on the other side is resurrection. And what do you do? How do you lay the foundation that when you come back to the land, there's your property? You already have the property.
Well, I'm not done yet. So the problem is we've been thinking, we've been fooled into this 4-year cycle of short-term thinking. Right? And like, this is why the covenant post-mill vision is so important with what we're doing in the Christian community, right? And that practically, I think, shakes its way out in how conservatives have thought about their own family. And so conservatives generally tend to care about family. Okay, I'm not saying Christian or not. Conservatives tend to care about building family, having a house, 2-car garage, and all that stuff. But what they've done is, because they're so stuck in this short-term thinking, that's why they have, their boats, their toys, their kids in public school and all that stuff, because we got to embrace the immediate and have fun here in the immediate and enjoy our lives. And of course, we don't reject that as Christians. Of course, we need to enjoy God and everything and embrace feasting and all that stuff. But they structure all their finances, all their family, all their kid raising around the short term. And so the lack of long-term thinking is what is making them make some really kind of deathly decisions.
That's what Keith was talking about earlier, right?
Some decisions at the very beginning that are already creating cracks in the foundation. And so those cracks are created in the foundation because we're thinking so short term, And then that's why your kids grow up. We've raised a generation of kids who've grown up who don't even know what it really means to even be conservative, not let alone Christian. And so this short-term thinking, I think, has been devastating to mom and dad. And that's why we can't even fathom, like, oh my goodness, how difficult would it be to pull out my kids out of public school right now?
Right.
They're thinking so short-term that's such a big decision for them.
Right.
When if you're thinking long-term, pulling your kids out of public school is like a blip on the map.
Yeah.
We've restructured
that has massive implications.
That has massive implications. And you know, thinking I think another way of this shaking out, you know, thinking short term means you aren't really dedicating yourself to a church. You aren't really trying to what can my church be doing? What can the families in my church be doing to build my community in the next 40 years? We aren't thinking that way. Should we build a Christian school? Which I hope that's part of the calculus, right?
Yeah.
Should we build a restaurant in town, a pub? Should we, it's like, should I bring my business overseas into my town or whatever's going on? If we're thinking long-term, then all of a sudden these are big decisions. They're huge. Starting a school is not easy.
Yeah.
Bringing your business into town, maybe you had, offices throughout all the states or something, bringing it, consolidating it in your own town or whatever. Those are all big decisions. But if you're thinking long-term, the calculation all of a sudden becomes very different with what you're doing in your community. And then same thing, like one of the unintended consequences that I didn't realize was when Doug started New St. Andrews in 1994, all of a sudden we have, 25 years later, whatever, how long it's been, 30 years later. So NSA has been around for about 30 years now. And now we have 400 college students coming into town every year and helping with the economy.
Right.
Well, helping. We got, 2 producers. All 3 producers went to NSA.
Yeah.
And where would cross politics be without these producers? Well, NSA was helping build the economy, not just the education institution. Right?
Child labor, man. It's great.
Child labor.
I believe it. Amen.
But my point is, we've heard the kind of parents joking a little bit over the years. Like, man, I send my kids to NSA, they get married, and they don't come back.
Right.
My response to them is, I'm sympathetic.
I've heard you say this. This is brutal.
My response to them is, well, then build them something to come back to. Like what you're communicating to me is that you aren't building something that's attractive to your own kids to come back to. And so
that goes back to where we're talking about, like, okay, so what is it your grandkids
can you build in the next 40 years to make it happen?
Yep.
Instead of getting in this 4-year cycle in this political Trump, Biden, Democrat, Republican world where you're thinking only every 4 years. I mean, how many people right now are thinking, man, if Trump gets elected, inflation's going to go down, banking's going to come back and housing prices, it's all this stuff. It's like, don't get stuck in that 4-year mentality. Get stuck in that covenantal generational mentality. And I think your decisions will be, your calculation, your decisions will better set your family up in such a way, if
go ahead. I'll let you finish, because I got something. I got it. I think that there's a mindset between living in the Moses era and then living in the Joshua era and the Jesus era, the new Joshua, right? I think we have to understand that we need to be thinking far more like Caleb, who is saying, and Joshua, who is saying, I wonder if the Lord will give us that mountain.
Yeah.
And so he goes and get his sons to go with him at 80. I'm going to go take that spot.
Yeah.
And when you have that mentality, it doesn't matter if there's giants in the land, if everything's all in control or not. You're looking to see where, and this is why I love what David Reese is doing. David Reese is sitting up here saying, I'm going to go get businesses that benefit people. I'm going to buy them. I'm going to hire Christian people for those businesses. And we are going to employ great products that are a blessing to other people and do it as much as we can so that we can have a culture that shows the glory of God touching people in the economy.
That's right. And
employment, and that we have control over, that we get. So then, okay, I'm going to do whatever it is. If I'm selling tables, I'm going to figure, okay, I need to buy a forest. How do I get a forest in my hand so I can control that? And so you start looking and saying, where are the strategic points that I can say, I wonder if God's going to move us in that way. Because since it's all his now, right? Since it's all his, he's a new Joshua. He's taking it all. I wonder what that mountain looks like if we claim it for Jesus. Yeah. Let's go see. Or you're acting like Jonathan. I wonder what it looks like, right? If God will give us this. I don't see people thinking like that. They're way more in a fearful mentality, fearful position. And it's like, I wonder what it looks like if we take our kids out of government schools. Right. I wonder what it looks like if we move to a place and devote ourselves to true worship. Because if you don't worship, you don't win. Bottom line, look, I just did one of those alliterations.
You don't worship, you don't win.
That's it.
A win is a win is a win.
You gotta get that right first. And so I want to find the group of people, the Christians, to be thinking, I wonder what it looks like if we decide to obey God in this area and go take something for the name of Jesus.
That's right.
That's the positions that we need to be in. That's where our heart needs to be at. And starting very locally. You don't get to the point where you take a mountain if you can't take the little molehill in front of you. You gotta train your kids up. Probably, Jay, I'll give you last word.
Our conversation yesterday, and it ends up tying into Jesus' resurrection. There is a man seated at the right hand of God the Father, and through his death, his burial, his resurrection, he is restoring creation. Adam brought death to the world. We're bringing life, and we genuinely have good news to the LGBT. We have good news to the leftists. We have, and we have to go forth in the gospel that we are actually bringing life to where there's death. We're bringing resurrection to where there's death. So I just think the central element we need to keep in mind is the death, the burial, and resurrection of Jesus, and that it's a longer discussion, but tied in with creation, and then all this dominion stuff. Jesus being the second Adam and dominion, it begins to fall into place, but it begins by understanding Christ has risen from the dead. He's conquering all of his enemies. Now let's go forth and basically that Joshua, let's go forth and conquer through grace, humility, and that might mean our death, but it's going to mean resurrection for the people before us.
Amen.
That's where you start. That's where you stop.
That's where we end. Yep. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some children. If you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic.
Home. It's where you build your legacy, where traditions are started, seeds are planted, meals are shared, and stories are told. We are Chris and Natalie Carpenter, owners of Story Real Estate, and our team of top agents helps people find homes in Moscow, Idaho, and around the country.
Have you thought about a move? Contact us to get connected with a top agent who shares your values and puts your family first. Or reach out to us about our Moscow relocation guide.
Wherever you're looking to go, we can help you find home. Call us at Story Real Estate or visit us at storyrealestate.com and start building your legacy.